So up until this point, you should have all of your parts drawn. To cut them out, again, you have two options. Option one is going to be standard traditional scissors. You can use those if you'd like. I'm not a fan of scissors. I cut crooked. Option two then is going to be knife and cutting mat. I have a cutting mat underneath of mine already. So if you need one of those, or if you want to use one of those, please do so. When you cut with a knife, just note that if I looked at this knife, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a shiny edge. You can kind of see it right there. The shiny edge is the sharp edge. Please make sure to keep the sharp thing away from the fingers. They have a tendency to not agree with each other. When I use an X-Acto knife, I hold it like a pencil. So I hold my pencil, I draw it pretty firm like that. I hold my X-Acto knife like that too. Now I understand some of you hold pencils a little bit differently than I do. That's how I do it. When cutting with an X-Acto knife, I try to keep this angled portion as parallel or flat to the paper as possible. Try not to hold it straight up. If you hold it straight up like this, the paper has a tendency to rip and tear a little bit instead of cut so much. When I hold it flatter, I find it cuts a little bit better. Also, when cutting, I apply a lot of pressure. Okay? So I'm applying a lot of pressure both to the knife and the ruler. So to start, I'm going to cut out my main body panel. Again, I'm going to start on this line. When I cut, one thing I make sure of is that my ruler is exactly on the line and that my fingers don't overhang the ruler. You could probably see the hazard here if my finger overhung the edge of the ruler, or my finger or my thumb would be in the way, and I might nick it. And just as a side note, if you ever do accidentally cut yourself, please make sure you tell me. It's not a huge deal. You just got to make sure you get the proper first aid, get a Band-Aid on it, or whatever you might need. So hold it on line. I have a lot of pressure holding down on my ruler, and I'm going to drag my knife along the edge of my ruler. Again, I'm pushing down pretty hard, almost to the point where I imagine trying to cut through my cutting mat. So I'm going to cut that portion out. Again, I'll reset my ruler. A lot of pressure down. Now I have my main body panel cut out. On the end of your main body panel, there are these two lines. This is for the rear flap portion. Let's make sure that we make this cut and this cut as well. Don't forget about them. I mean, if you forget, you can always go back and do it, but as long as you're cutting main body panel parts, please make sure that those get cut. So, main body panel is all cut. I've got my rear flap cut out. I'm going to set that off to the side. Then I'm going to work on my air scoop. I just start cutting pieces out again on an angled line. The key to cutting out the air scoop or any other part, again, is a lot of pressure and take your time. Don't go fast. I don't want to sound arrogant when I say this, but I make it look fairly easy. If you've never used an X-Acto knife before, it's a little bit tougher than it looks. They have a tendency to tear, wobble off the line. Again, a lot of pressure I find helps that to keep the knife going straight. If you don't use a lot of pressure, it has a tendency to not work. So I'm going to cut out both my scoop and my fins all at once. I will then put this in my recycling bin and save it for another day. So air scoop, I'll continuously cut out. I'm going to cut out on that angled line. Again, just make sure that you're very careful. Try not to cut yourself. Use a fair amount of pressure and take your time. One thing I should mention, never try to freehand with an X-Acto knife. In this case, like I have this line, I wouldn't want to try to just cut this without a ruler. You're going to have the tendency to wobble and it'll be crooked. Always use that ruler. Use that straight edge. Do not freehand. So again, make sure you discard of other parts. I'm going to make this little slit in the middle. I'll separate my fins out. There's fin 2. And then my other fin is over here. If you look closely at this fin, it looks like I'm off the line a little bit. You can see part of the line. In that case, I would put my ruler back over the top of it, and I would straighten that out. So now I have my fins complete. If I looked at the parts that I needed, I've got 2 fins. I've got a main body panel and an air scoop, all of which have been cut. The next step is then to fold. Folding is not terribly difficult. I'm going to use my ruler. I'm going to use the corner of the ruler to score or indent my dotted line. So again, any dashed line is a fold line. So I'm going to press down with my ruler, and I'm going to drag the edge of my ruler down that dash line. And again, I'll do this side. Reason behind that, it's going to make it a lot easier to fold. It's going to be nice and crisp. You get a nice 90-degree fold out of that. So I did my air scoop, and now I'm going to come back and do the main body panel. So again, taking my time, I will press down, drag along that dash line. Now, if you wanted, you could definitely put a ruler on there. Use two rulers. Drag one ruler next to the other. Again, I'm not cutting the paper. I'm just creating a nice crease so that now when I fold it, when I push down on it, if we looked up at it, it's a pretty sharp fold. If you were to just try to fold that without the crease in it, or the indent, the scoring mark, it would be kind of round. It wouldn't be very accurate. So I've got those, and actually we got to do the rear flap as well, so just get a nice score on that. Just put a little bend to it. So I've got my main body panel bent up. My air scoop, again, you can do the same thing. Just fold it on those lines, those score marks. So now my air scoop, my fins are all ready to go for assembly.